In the year 50 AD, in a workshop in Alexandria, a Greek engineer named Hero built a machine that spun on its own, powered by nothing but boiling water. It was the world's first steam engine, and then they used it to open temple doors as a party trick. The Romans were standing at the doorway of the modern world, 17 centuries early. They had the engineers, they had the iron, they had an empire of 70 million people stretching from Scotland to the Sahara. So what if they had walked through that door? What if Rome never waited for the Industrial Revolution? Because Rome was the Industrial Revolution. This is the story of a world that almost was. To understand how close it came, you have to understand what Rome already had. By the 1st century, Roman engineering was the most advanced on Earth. They built aqueducts that carried water across 100 miles using only gravity, accurate to a fraction of a degree. They poured concrete that still stands 2,000 years later, from a recipe we only recently rediscovered. They ran mines so deep they needed water wheels 30 feet across just to keep them from flooding. And in southern Gaul, at a site called Barbagal, 16 water wheels were stacked down a hillside in the largest concentration of mechanical power anywhere in the ancient world, a true factory grinding flour for tens of thousands. The Romans understood gears. They understood pistons, their pumps used them. They understood steam. Every single ingredient of the Industrial Revolution was sitting on the table. The only thing missing was the idea to combine them. So let's give them the idea. Imagine it is the year 120 AD. The empire is at its peak under the Emperor Hadrian. And in a workshop in Alexandria, the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, an engineer does not use Hero's spinning steam toy to open doors. He bolts it to a pump. Suddenly, the mines of Spain and Dacia can go deeper than ever before, pulling out silver and iron faster than any rival civilization could dream. Gold flows into Rome, and the emperors notice. In our history, Roman elites looked down on machines and manual labor. That was work for slaves. But in this world, the machine makes the emperor richer, and nothing in Rome moves faster than the emperor's greed. Imperial money pours into the workshops of Alexandria. Within a generation, the steam pump becomes the steam engine, and the engine goes on wheels. By the year 200, iron rails run alongside the Roman roads, those famous straight roads, now carrying steam locomotives instead of marching legions. A message that once took a month to travel from Rome to Britain now takes days. The empire, which in our timeline was already cracking under its own size, suddenly is not too big anymore. It is perfectly connected. The legions ride to the frontier on rails. The grain of Egypt feeds the cities of Gaul in a week. Rome does not fall in 476, because the thing that killed it, the slow collapse of distance and communication, never happens. Now picture the cities. Roman concrete, freed from the limits of muscle, climbs upward. Factories line the Tiber, powered by coal dug from Britain, which in this world is not a damp frontier, but the industrial heartland of the empire, exactly as it would become 17 centuries later. Smoke rises over the Colosseum. And in this imagined world, Roman engineers might even begin to chase electricity itself, an empire that speaks one language, Latin, dreaming of wiring itself together with copper from Spain. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the modern world, all of it pulled 1,000 years closer. And the consequences would not stop at the empire's borders. In our history, it took until 1492 for Europeans to cross the Atlantic. But give Rome iron steamships by the year 400, vessels that do not depend on the wind, and the map of the world is redrawn 1,000 years ahead of schedule. Picture Roman explorers reaching the shores of the Americas, not in the age of Columbus, but in the age of Constantine. There is no dark age, because Rome never falls to plunge Europe into one. There is no Europe of knights and castles, no Viking longships raiding the coasts, because the world has already moved on. The kings, the crusades, the slow rediscovery of the New World, the long climb back to civilization, none of it happens. Instead, a single industrial superpower, speaking Latin, sits astride the planet by the year 500, with steamships in every ocean and iron rails on every shore it can reach. And here is the dizzying part. If the Industrial Revolution had begun in the 2nd century instead of the 18th, then everything that followed in our timeline, electricity, flight, the splitting of the atom, would arrive not in our era, but more than 1,000 years early. By the time our real Middle Ages were only beginning, an industrial Rome might already be reaching for the stars. The civilization that gave us concrete and roads and law could have given us the rocket and the reactor, while the rest of our world was still lighting its homes with candles. But do not mistake this for paradise, because the engine that built this world ran on something darker than coal. Rome was a slave society. By some estimates, as many as 1 in 5 people in Italy were enslaved. In our history, the Industrial Revolution slowly made slavery obsolete. Machines were cheaper than people. But this Rome industrializes with slavery, not instead of it. Imagine factories worked by the enslaved, mines that swallow human lives by the thousands, an industrial machine with no reformers, no labor movement, no end in sight. An empire that never falls is also an empire that never has to change. The smoke over Rome is the smoke of a 1,000-year regime that fused the power of the modern world with the morality of the ancient one. This is the question alternate history forces on us. Would an industrial Rome have been a golden age, or the most powerful tyranny the world has ever known? So why didn't it happen? Why did the world have to wait until 1760 in England and not 120 in Rome? Historians point to a few quiet reasons. Slavery itself removed the pressure to invent labor-saving machines. When people are cheap, engines are pointless. There was no scientific method yet, no culture of relentless experimentation, no patents to reward an inventor. And Hero's engine produced barely enough power to spin itself. The leap from toy to locomotive needed better iron, better fuel, and a reason to bother. Rome had the pieces, but not the spark to connect them. It turns out the Industrial Revolution was never about a single invention. It was about a society that wanted one. England wanted it. Rome, swimming in cheap labor and aristocratic contempt for the machine, simply did not. And that is the strange lesson hiding in the ruins of an empire whose roads we still drive on today. History is not a straight line of progress. It is a series of doors. And sometimes the most advanced civilization on Earth walks right up to one, looks through it, and decides to use it to open the temple gates instead. If you want to see what other doors history almost opened, subscribe. Next time, we ask what the world would look like if the Library of Alexandria had never burned. Until then, the empire that never was closer than you think.